We had been married for 5 years, but my wife had never let me touch her because of her deep insecurity. To test if I would cheat, she flirted with me using various burner accounts on Snapchat. She even asked her gorgeous cousin to tempt me in person. Faced with her crazy mind games, I decided I had had enough. Since you went out of your way to send your hot cousin to seduce me, I'll just give you exactly what you asked for, and make you regret it for the rest of your life. Vanessa, you have to test him for me. I'm so worried he'll cheat on me and break my heart. If he can resist a gorgeous woman like you, then I'll finally be able to trust him. On my walk home from the subway after work, I suddenly spotted a woman ahead of me. Her figure looked exactly like my wife Chloe. Chloe had a smoking hot body and stunning looks. She was the kind of woman who stood out in any crowd. But next to her was another woman with an equally incredible body. Just looking at her back, I could tell she was a head-turner. I quickened my pace to catch up. As I got closer, I confirmed it was indeed my wife. Just as I was about to call out her name, I heard her say those exact words to the beautiful woman next to her. I froze in my tracks, watching their retreating figures fade into the distance. Chloe and I met through a blind date arranged by our families. We had been married for almost 5 years, but we didn't have any kids. It wasn't because there was something wrong with us physically. It was because even though we slept in the same bed every night for 5 years, I had never actually touched her. Every time things got heated and we reached the critical moment, Chloe would abruptly stop. She would make up all kinds of excuses to back out. I had imagined a million possibilities. I even wondered if she was asexual, or if she was secretly gay. But over these 5 years, the reality of living together made me realize the real reason why Chloe wouldn't let me touch her. She was an extremely sensitive woman with severe trust issues. In the beginning, the moment I walked through the door, she would immediately sniff me to check if I smelled like another woman's perfume. Then came the phone checks. She would scroll through every single message, even my chats with my boss on WhatsApp. We had so many fights over this. Although she got a bit better later, I still woke up in the middle of the night several times to find her secretly going through my phone. Not only that, but she also created multiple fake Snapchat accounts to add me. She would text me and try to flirt with me. Her acting was honestly terrible. I could always tell it was her within 10 messages, but I had to play along and pretend I didn't know. And now, hearing her ask her cousin to test me, I had to face the bitter truth. The reason she hadn't let me touch her all these years was simple. She just didn't trust the man she shared a bed with. She was worried I would betray her, and she was always keeping herself ready for a divorce. This kind of love was suffocating. I had endured a sexless marriage for 5 whole years. Watching them disappear around the corner, I let out a bitter laugh and headed home. I wanted to see what kind of game she and her cousin were planning to play with me. But before I even reached our apartment, my phone rang. It was Chloe. I answered, and her voice came through the speaker. "Hey babe, I just got a last-minute notice. I have to go out of town for a business trip for a few days." I didn't know if she was actually traveling or just making it up. I just gave a casual reply. Chloe continued, "Babe, I'm going to miss you so much. You better miss me too. Oh, by the way, my college BFF is coming to our city for a seminar. She has nowhere to stay, so she's going to crash at our place for a few days. Don't go teasing her, or I'll skin you alive when I get back." I was stunned. The BFF she was talking about was definitely the cousin she was just walking with. That meant for the next few days, while Chloe was away, I would be living alone with her stunning cousin. I was going to be subjected to her test. To be honest, if I hadn't overheard their conversation, and a woman that beautiful threw herself at me, I really didn't know if I could control myself. After all, my body had been starved of physical intimacy for 5 years. I was incredibly sensitive right now. But on second thought, her cousin's test probably wouldn't go too far. At most, it would be some verbal flirting. She wouldn't dare to do anything truly wild. After thinking it over, I decided to stop stressing and just went home. But what happened next proved that I was being completely naive. Back at the apartment, I unlocked the door quietly. The living room was empty. Where was her cousin? As I looked around, I suddenly heard the toilet flush in the bathroom. My heart skipped a beat. I felt a surge of nervousness. I quickly walked to the living room, trying to act normal. Just then, the bathroom door opened. I turned to look. My eyes swept over her cousin. And damn, she was breathtaking. She was exactly as I had imagined, a top-tier beauty. She had delicate features, a cute nose and large, captivating eyes. She was wearing an oversized white button-down shirt, with no pants in sight, showing off her long, smooth legs. Chloe's body was already hot, but her cousin's figure was on a whole different level. Our eyes met, and we both froze for a moment. It took me a few seconds to snap out of it and greet her. "Hi, you must be Chloe's friend. I'm Ethan." She snapped out of it too, her cheeks turning slightly pink as she smiled at me. "Hi, I'm Vanessa. Thanks for letting me stay here." I waved my hands quickly. "No problem at all. Make yourself at home. Let me know if you need anything. There's food in the fridge, so feel free to cook if you're hungry." She gave a sweet, gentle smile. Great, thank you so much. I nodded at her and quickly retreated to my bedroom. Honestly, being alone with her felt a bit awkward. But once I was back in my room, my mind started racing. Wasn't Vanessa on a mission to test me? When was she going to start? Aside from being nervous, I actually felt a tiny spark of anticipation. Night came, and I stayed in my bedroom. I heard her wash her clothes, take a shower, and then head to the guest room. She didn't come out again. I thought the night would just pass quietly like this. But around 3 a.m., I was woken up by some faint rustling noises coming from the living room. Since my wife and I both worked long hours and traveled a lot, we were worried about break-ins, so we had installed a security camera in the living room. I figured it was Vanessa, but just in case it was an actual burglar, I pulled out my phone and opened the camera feed. What I saw on the screen made my jaw drop. Vanessa was in the kitchen. Every single move she made was incredibly cautious, as if she was terrified of making noise and waking me up. Because her clothes were probably still wet from the wash, she was only wearing her underwear. Even though the camera feed was in black and white, the view made my blood run hot. She probably hadn't eaten dinner and got hungry in the middle of the night. I sat there in the dark, quietly admiring her perfect body through my phone screen until she finished eating and tiptoed back to the guest room. When she closed her door, she lingered by the frame for a moment, as if listening for any sound from my room. Only after her door clicked shut did I lock my phone. But sleep was completely gone now. The image of her was burned into my mind. After a long time, I let out a soft laugh. With how timid she was acting, testing me was going to be a struggle for her. If she really wanted to test me, she should have made a loud noise to lure me out to the living room. Finding her in nothing but her underwear would have been a real test. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Chloe, asking how things were going and how Vanessa was doing. I simply texted back that I had only seen her once when I got home, and then I left for the office. If I stayed home, Vanessa would probably stay locked in her room all day, especially since her clothes were still drying. At this point, I figured Vanessa wouldn't be able to pull off the difficult task Chloe had given her. I stopped worrying about it, and the anticipation from yesterday faded. I just hoped these few days would pass quickly without too much awkwardness. But the real show was only just beginning. When I returned to the apartment the next evening at 6:30 p.m., the smell of roasted garlic, rosemary, and sizzling ribeye steak hit me the moment I turned the key. Soft jazz was humming from the Bluetooth speaker on the kitchen island. The living room had been transformed. The harsh overhead lighting was switched off, replaced by the warm, amber glow of the floor lamp in the corner. 2 crystal wine glasses and an uncorked bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon sat on the polished dining table. Standing in front of the stove was Vanessa. She had changed out of the oversized shirt from the night before. Now she wore a form-fitting emerald green knit slip dress that clung to every curve of her body, ending just above mid-thigh. Her dark hair was pinned up loosely with a tortoiseshell claw clip, leaving the long, pale line of her neck completely bare. A single droplet of water from a fresh shower lingered just above the notch of her collarbone. She turned around, holding a wooden spatula, offering me a soft, slightly breathless smile. "You're back early," she said, her voice smooth and low. "I hope you don't mind. I looked through the freezer and saw you had 2 prime steaks. I figured since you're letting me crash here for free, the least I could do was make dinner." "Not at all," I said, loosening my tie and hanging my suit jacket over the back of an armchair. "Smells incredible. Better than anything I've cooked in months." She chuckled, turning the heat down on the pan. "Chloe always told me you were a great cook." I felt a little intimidated, honestly. "Chloe told her?" I smiled inwardly. Chloe hadn't eaten a home-cooked meal with me in 4 weeks. Every time I made dinner, she claimed she was intermittent fasting or that she had already grabbed a salad at the office. "Chloe exaggerates," I replied mildly, walking over to the counter and washing my hands at the sink. "Need any help?" "Actually, yes," she said, biting her lower lip in a seemingly shy gesture. "Could you check the zipper on the back of this dress? It keeps catching on the inner lining, and I couldn't reach it properly." She turned her back to me. The back of the green dress dipped low, exposing the smooth expanse of her spine. Right at the base of her shoulder blades, the tiny golden pull of the zipper was indeed slightly askew. I stepped closer. The scent of her perfume, jasmine, sweet amber, and warm vanilla, filled the narrow space between us. It was intoxicating. After 5 years of sleeping next to a woman who wore oversized flannel pajamas buttoned to the chin and flinched whenever my knee brushed her thigh, standing this close to an undeniably gorgeous, warm woman sent a jolt of raw heat straight down my spine. My fingers brushed against her warm skin as I gripped the zipper pull. Vanessa let out a tiny, barely audible gasp, her shoulders trembling slightly. "Cold fingers?" I asked quietly, keeping my voice level. "A little," she whispered, not moving away. Instead, she leaned back just a fraction of an inch, the warmth of her back pressing lightly against my chest. Just be gentle. I carefully freed the fabric from the zipper teeth and pulled it up to her neck, smoothing the cloth over her shoulders. There. All fixed. Thank you, Ethan, she murmured, turning back to face me. Her cheeks were flushed with genuine color, her dark eyes searching mine with a mixture of nervous excitement and calculated intent. You're very attentive. Just being a good host, I said with a calm, polite smile, taking a deliberate step back toward the table to pour the wine. As I poured the deep red liquid into the glasses, my eyes caught something unusual on the high bookshelf near the television. A small, matte black digital clock had been placed between two hardcover books. It wasn't ours. Chloe had bought that exact wireless pinhole camera clock 3 months ago, claiming it was for monitoring the cleaning service. I raised my glass, meeting Vanessa's gaze through the rim. So Chloe isn't just relying on your verbal report, is she? She's sitting in her hotel room right now, watching our every move in high definition. The thought, which should have made me furious, only made a cold, razor-sharp thrill settle deep in my chest. Dinner was an exercise in masterclass psychological warfare. Vanessa played her part with increasing boldness. She laughed at my dry jokes, leaned across the table so her cleavage was framed by the candlelight, and occasionally reached out to brush her hand against mine while passing the bread basket. You know, Ethan, she said, swirling the wine in her glass, her eyes glistening. I always wondered why Chloe got so lucky. A handsome guy who has a great corporate job, cooks, keeps the apartment spotless, and never goes out drinking on weekends. Men like you don't exist anymore. Every man has his flaws, Vanessa, I replied, cutting into my steak. What's yours then? She leaned forward, resting her chin in her palms. Because from where I'm sitting, Chloe has everything any woman could dream of. Yet she's always complaining that she's stressed. My flaw is that I have too much patience, I said, looking straight into her eyes. Sometimes, patience looks a lot like weakness. Vanessa's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. A flicker of uncertainty passed through her dark eyes. Right on cue, her phone on the table buzzed with a notification. She quickly glanced down at the screen. I had 20/20 vision and caught the preview text from the contact saved as C. Why are you just talking about food? Sit on the sofa with him. Spill some wine on his shirt. Make your move. Vanessa swallowed hard, subtly flipping the phone face down. Her fingers were trembling slightly as she picked up her wine glass. Ethan, she said, her voice carrying a slightly forced lightness. Why don't we move to the sofa and watch a movie? I brought some dessert. Sure, I said, standing up. Let me clear the plates. No, sit down. I'll bring the dessert. I walked over to the sectional couch and sat in the center. A moment later, Vanessa walked out of the kitchen holding a bowl of chocolate-covered strawberries and 2 fresh glasses. She didn't sit on the other side of the sofa. She sat right next to me, her bare thigh pressing firmly against my slacks, her body heat radiating through the fabric. She picked up a strawberry and held it up to my lips. Try it. I made the dark chocolate glaze myself. I didn't open my mouth immediately. I looked at the strawberry, then shifted my gaze to the black clock on the shelf 20 feet away, and finally back to Vanessa's face. Up close, beneath the heavy foundation and flirtatious eyeliner, I noticed the tight lines around her mouth and the subtle bead of sweat near her temple. She was terrified. Vanessa, I said softly, reaching out and gently taking the strawberry from her fingers, setting it back on the plate. What's wrong? She whispered, her voice wavering. Don't you like chocolate? I like honesty a lot more, I said. I pulled out my phone, unlocked the screen, and placed it on the coffee table. Between us. On the screen was the audio recording app one had opened yesterday afternoon on my walk from the subway. I pressed play. Through the phone's speaker, Chloe's sharp, anxious voice echoed into the quiet living room. Vanessa, you have to test him for me. I'm so worried he'll cheat on me and break my heart. If he can resist a gorgeous woman like you, then I'll finally be able to trust him. Vanessa's entire body went rigid. All the color vanished from her face. Her lips parted in sheer, unadulterated horror as she stared at the glowing screen. You knew, she choked out, her voice barely a whisper. From the very beginning. From yesterday at 5:15 p.m., I said calmly, leaning back against the cushions. I was walking 15 feet behind the two of you. Vanessa scrambled backward onto the other end of the couch, clutching the throw pillow to her chest like a shield, trembling from head to toe. Ethan. Please let me explain. Shoo, I held up a finger, pointing toward the digital clock on the shelf. Keep your voice down. Chloe is watching through the wireless camera on the 3rd shelf. If you ruin the performance now, she'll close the stream before the curtain falls. Vanessa's eyes widened until the whites showed completely. She looked at the clock, then at me, looking as if she had been plunged into a tank of freezing water. You knew about the camera too? I know where every wire, every screw, and every hidden paranoia in this apartment is buried. I replied quietly, taking a slow sip of my wine. I've lived in this prison for 5 years. Ethan, I'm so sorry, she whispered, genuine tears welling in her eyes, spilling over her lashes and running down her flushed cheeks. Chloe. She paid for my mother's chemotherapy treatments 2 years ago. She lent my family $30,000. Last week, she came to my apartment crying, saying that you were acting distant, that you were probably having an affair with your secretary, that she was losing her mind. She begged me on her knees to do this. She said if you failed, she could divorce you without feeling guilty. If you passed, she would finally give you a child. I let out a low, bitter laugh that felt like dry autumn leaves scraping against stone. A child? I shook my head. Vanessa, do you know how many times Chloe and I have been intimate in 5 years of marriage? Vanessa hesitated, biting her lip. She told me. She said you two had a normal sex life, but lately things had cooled down. 0, I said. The word fell into the room like a block of lead. Vanessa froze. What? 5 years? 0 times, I repeated, looking her dead in the eye. Not once. Not on our wedding night. Not on our honeymoon in Bali. Not on our anniversaries. Every single time, she pushed me away. She claimed she was traumatized by an ex, claimed she had a panic disorder, claimed she needed more time to build spiritual trust. I respected her boundaries. I waited. I slept on my side of the bed, never forcing her, never demanding, cooking her meals, managing her finances, taking care of her parents when they were hospitalized. Vanessa's jaw was slack, her eyes shining with profound disbelief and shock. And how did she repay that patience? I continued, pointing a finger at the shelf, with 50 burner accounts testing if I'd bite, with perfume sniff tests, every time I walked through the door, with hidden cameras in my own home. And, finally, by hiring her own blood relative to crawl into my bed so she could justify her own sick, twisted narcissism. Vanessa buried her face in her hands, letting out a ragged, trembling sob. She's sick. She lied to me about everything. She made you sound like a cold, cheating monster. She isn't sick, Vanessa, I said softly, stepping over and sitting beside her, handing her a clean linen napkin to wipe her face. She's just a coward who wants all the benefits of a devoted husband without ever having to risk a single drop of her own vulnerability. Vanessa looked at me through her wet eyelashes. For the first time, she wasn't looking at a target for a honeypot trap. She was looking at a man whose soul had been systematically drained dry for half a decade. What are you going to do? She whispered. I leaned in, my lips inches from her ear, keeping my voice beneath the microphone's threshold while the camera only captured the angle of our faces, leaning together in intimate proximity. I'm going to give my dear wife the exact show she paid for, I whispered. And then I am going to walk out of this door and never look back. Vanessa shuddered as my breath grazed her ear. A strange, reckless spark ignited in her eyes. How do we do it? She asked. For the next 48 hours, Vanessa and I put on a performance worthy of an Academy Award. We knew the camera's blind spots, its audio capture range, and its optical resolution. On Friday evening, Vanessa walked past the living room camera wearing a sheer silk robe, casually letting the belt loosen so the lace of her lingerie was visible for 2 seconds before she hurried into my bedroom. Inside the bedroom, where there was no camera, we sat on the floor eating takeout pizza, drinking cold beer, and talking about our real lives. I learned that Vanessa was 26, an aspiring graphic designer who worked 60-hour weeks at an advertising agency, struggling to pay off her student loans while supporting her mother. She was witty, sharp, tired of her family's endless financial demands, and completely disgusted by Chloe's manipulative control. Chloe has always been like this, Vanessa told me over a slice of pepperoni. Even when we were kids, if she had a toy, she wouldn't play with it, but the second another kid looked at it, she'd smash it to pieces so no one else could have it. Sounds familiar, I sighed. Ethan, she looked up at me, her eyes soft in the dim lamplight. Yeah. Why didn't you leave 3 years ago? Because when you're in the middle of it, you think it's your fault, I answered. Honestly, you think, if I just work harder, if I just buy her that bag, if I'm just more understanding, she'll finally feel safe. You don't realize that a bucket with a hole in the bottom will never fill up, no matter how much water you pour into it. Vanessa reached out, her warm, soft hand resting over mine. This time there was no camera to perform for. There was no green dress, no calculated seduction. Just a genuine, quiet touch between two people who understood what it felt like to be used. She doesn't deserve you, Vanessa murmured. I know, I said, squeezing her hand gently. Which is why tomorrow morning, this ends. At 11 p.m. on Saturday night, we executed the final act. In the living room, directly in front of the camera clock, Vanessa threw her arms around my neck. I caught her by the waist, lifting her onto the kitchen island just as we had rehearsed. Her green dress rode up her thighs. She tangled her fingers in my hair, throwing her head back with a soft, breathy moan that the microphone picked up with crystal clarity. I leaned down, pressing my lips against the hollow of her throat, my hands gripping the smooth skin of her waist. To anyone watching the live feed, it was a scene of unbridled, long-suppressed passion boiling over. Busy. My phone, resting on the counter face up, lit up with 17 consecutive missed calls from Chloe, followed by a torrent of frantic, hysterical text messages. Ethan, stop. Don't you dare touch her. I am on my way home right now. Whack you. Dead bastard, I will kill you both. I pulled back from Vanessa's neck, looked directly into the black lens of the clock camera, and offered a cold, slow, mocking smile. Then, I reached out and unplugged the clock from the wall. The screen went black. Sunday morning, 8:15 a.m. The sound of keys frantically scraping against the brass deadbolt echoed through the silent apartment. Slam. The heavy oak front door was kicked open with such force that it bounced off the drywall, leaving a deep dent in the plaster. Chloe stormed into the living room like an avenging fury. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her hair was a rat's nest, her expensive trench coat wrinkled and stained with coffee, her mascara smeared across her swollen, bloodshot eyes. She was holding a heavy tire iron in her right hand, her knuckles white with rage. You filthy, disgusting whore. Chloe shrieked at the top of her lungs, charging down the hallway toward the master bedroom. Ethan, get your ass out here. I'll kill you both. I swear to God I'll. She reached the living room archway and stopped dead in her tracks. The tire iron slipped from her fingers, clattering loudly against the hardwood floor. The apartment was spotless. The morning sunlight streamed through the clean glass windows, illuminating the dining table. Sitting at the table was not a pair of half-naked, guilty lovers cowering under sheets. I was sitting at the head of the table, wearing a crisp navy suit, freshly shaved, sipping hot black coffee from a porcelain cup. To my right sat Vanessa, wearing a modest cream sweater and dark jeans, calmly buttering a piece of sourdough toast. To my left sat Arthur Vance, Chloe's uncle and Vanessa's father, along with my attorney Richard Sterling, who had 3 thick leather binders open in front of him. On the credenza behind me, a professional Sony 4K camcorder was mounted on a tripod, red recording light blinking quietly, capturing Chloe's unhinged, violent entrance in full resolution. Morning, Chloe, I said, setting my coffee cup down with a soft porcelain clink. You're home early from your business trip. Chloe stood frozen in the center of the living room, her chest heaving in shallow, ragged gasps. Her eyes darted wildly between Vanessa, her father, the lawyer, and me. What is this? She stammered, her voice cracking. Uncle Arthur? Why are you here? Vanessa. Ethan. Last night on the camera. The camera was unplugged at 11:04 p.m. Arthur Vance interrupted, his voice heavy with profound disappointment and shame. Arthur was a retired high school principal, a man who valued family honor above all else. He looked at his niece as if she were a total stranger. Vanessa called me at midnight on Friday, Chloe, Arthur said, shaking his head. She told me everything. She told me how you used her mother's medical debt to coerce her into coming here to entrap your own husband. Uncle, no. She's lying. Chloe screamed, rushing forward, her hands clawing at the air. I saw them. On the kitchen island. Ethan was kissing her. He cheated. On me. He failed the test. There was no cheating, Miss Davis. Richard Sterling, my attorney, spoke up in a calm, razor-sharp baritone. He clicked a remote control, and the wall-mounted television turned on. On the screen was the high-definition footage from my camcorder, recorded at 11:05 p.m. last night, 1 minute after the pinhole camera was disconnected. The video showed Vanessa and me stepping apart immediately, high-fiving each other, and Vanessa pulling a bottle of sparkling water from the fridge while we discussed her portfolio designs. Chloe's eyes bulged. No. You staged it. You knew I was watching. Of course I knew, I said, standing up and buttoning my suit jacket. Just like I knew about the 12 burner Snapchat accounts you created over the past 4 years. Just like I knew about the keystroke logger you installed on my laptop 3 months ago. I walked over to the table and tapped the thickest leather binder. And just like I know about the $320,000 you secretly transferred from our marital joint account into an offshore trust under your maiden name over the last 48 months. Chloe's skin turned an ashen, sickly gray. Why you? How did you? Did you really think you were the only one who knew how to audit accounts? Chloe. Richard Sterling smiled coldly, sliding a stack of stamped bank records across the mahogany table. Pursuant to the Family Law Act, the attorney stated. Intentional concealment and fraudulent diversion of marital assets constitutes gross financial misconduct. Furthermore, we have certified psychiatric and medical affidavits documenting 5 years of willful non-consummation of the marriage based on fraudulent pretenses. Sterling tapped a silver pen against the documents. We are filing for an immediate decree of annulment on the grounds of fraud and non-consummation, alongside a civil lawsuit for the full restitution of the $320,000 plus statutory interest and legal fees. Annulment. Chloe's knees buckled. She collapsed onto the hardwood floor, her designer coat spilling around her like dirty laundry. She looked up at me, tears of pure terror finally breaking through her manic facade. Ethan, no. You can't annul our marriage. We've been together for 5 years. I love you. Everything I did. I only did it because I was afraid of losing you. You didn't love me, Chloe, I said, looking down at her with complete, unyielding indifference. You loved having a hostage. Uncle Arthur, tell him, Chloe wailed, crawling across the floor toward her uncle's chair. Tell him he can't do this. If we annul the marriage, what will everyone say at the country club? What will our relatives think? Arthur Vance stood up, looking down at his niece with cold disgust. When your aunt was in the ICU 2 years ago, Arthur said, his voice trembling with suppressed fury, you told me you took out a personal bank loan to help us with the $30,000. I spent 2 years bowing my head to you, treating you like our family's savior. He pointed at the forensic audit on the table. That money didn't come from your savings, Chloe. It came from Ethan's consulting bonuses that you stole from his payroll account. You used your husband's hard-earned money to buy my daughter's loyalty and turn her into your personal spy. Arthur turned on his heel, looking at his daughter. Vanessa, pack your things. We're leaving. Dad. Vanessa stood up, picking up her small duffel bag. She walked past Chloe, without glancing down once. When she reached me, she stopped. Thank you, Ethan, she said softly, her eyes clear and bright. For treating me like a human being. Take care of yourself, Vanessa, I smiled gently. Send me the invoice for your mother's remaining physical therapy bills. Consider the $30,000 fully settled on my end. Vanessa's lips parted in surprise, tears shining in her eyes. She leaned up, pressed a brief, warm kiss to my cheek and whispered, You're going to have an amazing life, Ethan. She walked out the door with her father, the front door closing quietly behind them. Inside the apartment, the silence was suffocating. Chloe sat on the floor, weeping hysterically, clutching the hem of my trousers. If please, I'll change. I swear to God I'll change. We can go to marriage counseling. I'll let you touch me. Tonight. Right now. We can have a baby. I gently, firmly pulled my trouser leg from her grip. 5 years too late, Chloe. I picked up my briefcase, handed the signed annulment petition to Richard Sterling and walked toward the entryway. The apartment is listed for sale as of 9 a.m. today, I said without looking back. The locksmith is arriving at noon to change the master cylinders. You have 3 hours to pack your clothes and get out. Ethan, she screamed, her voice breaking into a ragged, pathetic wail that echoed down the carpeted hallway. Don't leave me, Ethan. I stepped into the elevator, pressed the ground floor button and watched the polished steel door slide shut, cutting off her voice forever. 6 months later, the ocean breeze swept through the open terrace of my new 3-bedroom condo in San Diego, carrying the fresh, salty scent of the Pacific. The court proceedings had been swift and merciless. Faced with undeniable digital, financial, and testimonial evidence, the judge granted the annulment in record time. Chloe was ordered to repay the entire $320,000, along with $45,000 in legal damages. To satisfy the judgment, she had to sell her luxury SUV, liquidate her stock portfolio, and move back into her parents' cramped basement. Her reputation among our mutual social circles and professional network was completely obliterated. The woman who spent 5 years terrified of being abandoned had orchestrated her own absolute, inescapable isolation. As for me, I took a senior director position at a renewable energy consultancy on the West Coast. My mornings were spent surfing at dawn. My evenings were spent reading on the terrace, cooking fresh seafood, and sleeping in a king-sized bed with 0 cameras, 0 paranoia, and 0 suffocating games. Ding dong. The doorbell chimed. I walked over to the front door and pulled it open. Standing on the welcome mat was Vanessa. She was wearing a breezy floral sundress, a wide-brimmed straw hat, and sunglasses pushed up into her dark curls. She held a portfolio case in one hand and a chilled bottle of Pinot Grigio in the other. Hi, she beamed, her smile radiant in the California sunshine. Hi, I smiled back, stepping aside to let her in. How was the flight from Seattle? Long, she laughed, kicking off her sandals and walking straight toward the terrace to look out at the sparkling blue ocean. But totally worth it. The agency approved my brand redesign concept this morning. I officially landed the lead creative contract. Congratulations, I said, popping the cork on the wine and pouring 2 glasses. I never doubted you for a second. She took the glass, her fingers brushing against mine, warm, natural, and free of any hidden scripts or stolen trust. We stood side by side against the glass railing, watching the golden sun begin its slow descent into the Pacific waves. Vanessa turned her head, looking up at me with those large, captivating eyes, a playful, genuine smile curving her lips. So Ethan, she murmured, raising her glass. What's the test for tonight? I clinked my glass against hers, the crystal ringing clear and bright in the evening air. No tests, Vanessa, I said softly, feeling the boundless, unburdened warmth of true freedom settle deep in my soul. Just life.